biblical marriage is a hierarchy. It's not an equal distribution of power. It's not a collaboration. It is a top-down hierarchy. However, it's not intended to function as one, at least not permanently. Now, here's what I mean. The reason that there is so much debate over this, and we now have all of these different variations of isms like egalitarianism, complementarianism, traditionalism, and then all of the micro offshoots of each one, all of these things exist because most people incorrectly understand what a marriage actually is. So most people, when they think of marriage, they think of it first as a relationship. And then you run into the practicals of how within this relationship do we navigate conflict, which is more or less where the issue of structure and order in the relationship suddenly presents itself. Basically, who gets the final say? And since we live in a relatively socially advanced world, in most places anyway, the solution is not dictated by physical force, at least hopefully, right? And so that causes us to then have to default into alternative structures. And that's where we begin seeing all of these isms start to emerge, because we're essentially trying to negotiate what structure makes the most sense in this relationship, with the end effort being about honoring both people in the relationship while simultaneously having a power structure that allows for decisions to get made and the team or the partnership to be able to progress and advance successfully in life. The problem is that none of that has anything to do with why God created marriage. Okay, so let's start by properly defining what exactly a marriage is, right? Biblically speaking. So biblically, a marriage is a lifelong covenant or union between one man and one woman. Now, that covenant language is incredibly important, because what that's telling us is that when the two of us come together, we are no longer purely a relationship between two people, but rather we have actually legally formed an organization. Now, why did I say an organization instead of a partnership? Because God's purpose for creating the covenant of marriage was for the purpose of producing godly offspring. His intention was that every marriage is not a partnership, but rather the beginning of an organization. We call that organization a family. Now, like all organizations, you have to have an operating agreement. The operating agreement is what defines what the functions and roles of all the people within the organization are going to be. So that means, let's say myself and my wife form an organization. So me, Devin, my wife, Tiffany, right? In the organization or within the organization, we are no longer Devin and Tiffany. Per the operating agreement, we are also holders of offices. And those offices are called husband and wife. And so what that means is when two people get married, there is now two operating relationships, not one. One operating relationship is the personal relationship. That's where I'm Devin, she's Tiffany, and we are equals in Christ. And then the second operating relationship is within the marriage. In that relationship, I'm not Devin and she's not Tiffany. I am the husband and she is the wife. And we, together, are the officers of the organization, which would be the children. Now, here's why this is so important. It recontextualizes the verses of wives submit to your husbands and husbands love your wives. When you understand this as an operating agreement between the two officers in the company, this is no longer about patriarchy. It's no longer about men and women. It's not even about your personal relationship, right? My wife, Tiffany, doesn't submit to Devin. My wife, Tiffany, is the wife in the organization, and her office of wife submits to my office of husband. And the reason for that is that we collectively are submitted to God, who is the one who actually owns the company. That's why it says, wives, submit to your husband as unto the Lord. The submission is not actually to the husband. The submission is to the Lord. The expression of that submission is the office of wife submitting her office to the office of husband. And in the same way, the office of husband is called to love the wife and treat her well. And his submission to the Lord, the office of husband, the husband submits to the Lord by loving the office of wife, even if the person in that office is not being particularly lovable. And the reason it's set up like this is for the sake of the children. Shh,